We are now here with Dr. Watson, who has published an article in Urban Education called Diversity or Gentrification, Middle Class Parents at Working Class Schools. Hello, welcome. Tell us a little bit about, your field of research in general.
So I'm a sociology of education scholar. So I look at education in many forms. I also study race. So generally speaking, it's usually an intersection of these two things: how race and ethnicity, and how they intersect in schools.
Yeah. And in this article, you are focusing on a particular school. Tell us about that school.
So this school is a primary elementary school, K through 6, and they have brought about a dual language immersion program. Dual language immersion is mostly located in primary schools, and it is where you bring in a different language to teach in instruction. And this language is not like when you are taking a Spanish class in high school. It is incorporated or immersed into the school curriculum. So you may take, say, history in another language.
Mm-hmm. And the school, are you able to share like where it's located? A little
So
bit
it
more
is in
about that
Orange
school?
County. It's in
Okay.
Orange County, and the language that they chose for this school is Chinese. So Mandarin Chinese is the language they implemented.
Okay. And it's implemented, just to further set the scene, does the whole school adopt Mandarin immersion or not?
So in some instances, the whole school will, but where my research takes place is this school actually only used it as a strand of the entire school. So what that means is that not all of the students are participating in this dual language immersion program. Some of the students are continuing on with your traditional English only type of elementary education.
Wonderful. All right, thanks for setting the scene. So what are the questions that you are asking of this school?
So this paper is part of a larger project. So I ask a lot of questions. I start with sort of why would a school want to do this? What type of parents are attracted to this? Why do they come? And really, more specifically for this project, it is sort of like what happens when they get there. When you have parents who are coming for this program, what happens when they arrive, and particularly what happens with them vis-a-vis the parents who have already been at the school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fascinating things, I think, particular, like there's a proliferation now of these dual immersion programs,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. One reason why I chose the Orange County, because when I started this research project, there weren't many of these type of dual language immersion programs. Now you can find them many places within California and outside of California. But in Orange County at that time, there were only 2 or 3 when I started this research project.
Yeah. And how does one study this? What were your methods?
So I first, by nature of qualitative research, you have to sort of find a way to get into the field site. So I did a ethnography. So ethnography is where I'm sort of living the day-to-day life of a person affiliated with the school. I was at the school 3 times a week. I would spend the entire day there. I was in a classroom. The school was fortunate enough to allow me this access. So while I'm in the classroom, I get to know the teachers. I spend time in multiple classrooms. I also get to know the parents, because I'm there at pickup, I'm there at drop off. I introduce myself as a researcher. I tell them about my project, and then from there, I'm able to interview parents. I also, of course, am talking with teachers and administrators, the principal, vice principal, etc. And then I even went and was able to go to district level administrators and talk to them, those that were very concerned with the implementation of the program and how to run it, and the financial backing, etc.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the main things you find?
Well, I find in this paper in particular, we find that we see a unique group of parents that come to this type of a school. And when they arrive there, they sort of take over the school, and they begin to mold the school in the way that they see is best fit for their students, their children.
Mm-hmm. And this was just another important feature, right, that's captured in your title. This is a largely working class neighborhood,
Yes.
right, originally. for the school. Yeah.
Yeah, you asked before, set the scene. I forgot. Yes, this is the important part of the study is that this school is set in a working class neighborhood. It's actually kind of an interesting neighborhood because when you look nearby the school, yes, there's some residential, but there's also a lot of industrial buildings. There's a factory, small factory nearby, a sort of a trucking station or something. So this is a very much a working class neighborhood where this school is located. And then that leads to the title, diversity or gentrification. So what do we find when the parents arrive there is we see some diversity, but is it really diverse? And that is the question.
Yeah, because and just one more thing, like, why does a school even decide to adopt an immersion program? What are the motivations there for schools in general, or the school in particular?
Well, I think that most schools, and this school that I was at, would tell you, well, we want this immersion program because we're looking for something to help our kids, right? We want our kids to be global leaders. We want to push them, to not fall behind. But I argue that really this school in particular, and maybe many others, are really looking to find a way to have their school benefit or to improve. This school was in a working class neighborhood and it was struggling. It was not doing well by what most considered standard academic measures, test scores, things of this nature. And I argue that a lot of schools are looking for a way to sort of improve their lot, improve their test scores, to draw in parents. And the best way to improve test scores would be to draw specific type of parents. And the best way to draw those parents is to give them something that they can't get somewhere else.
Yeah. So, I see it in my head, right? I see the students who are from the neighborhood, and then it sounds like the immersion program, it's drawing all these folks, I'm guessing from outside the neighborhood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the students within the neighborhood, if they're in a working class neighborhood, they are of a similar type of socioeconomic class, of a similar race and ethnic background. However, those from outside the neighborhood are different with respect to class and race and ethnicity. So this is where we find this tension within the school.
And you use the concept of gentrification.
Yes. So gentrification, when we think about our neighborhood gentrification, many of us know what this means, right? We see it. I like to say a Starbucks comes into your neighborhood and you're like, oh no, here we go. Here comes the gentrification, right? We have really, when we think about it, we have sort of an influx of money or resources into a neighborhood. We have maybe a change in the culture of the neighborhood. And most importantly, we have a push out of a current residents in that neighborhood. And with school gentrification, it is not any different, right? We have an influx of resources or funding. We have a marginalization of a low income or marginalized population, and we have a sort of change in school culture at the school. And that is what I find that is happening at the school that I was at.
Yeah, because, just to resurrect a previous point you made, what you find is the folks from outside the neighborhood, they take over the major organizational pieces of it, right? Like the school boards, etc.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before this, of course, there was no parents really from outside the neighborhood. But when this program is implemented, parents outside the neighborhood want it. They can't find it in their neighborhoods. They come to this school and they are bringing with them sort of resources that they have, and they start to implement those things into the school. I remember, for example, there was a TK program. A lot of the students or a lot of the parents wanted to start a TK program, so they took it upon themselves to do it. There was a music program. A lot of the parents wanted to start a music program, so they took it upon themselves to do it. And they have the resources. One of them told me, I knew someone at Chapman University that taught music. So I was able to bring them into the school to volunteer to teach music to the kids. And this led to, the district getting involved and providing more funding for the music program, et cetera. So we see this type of thing. And we also see that now their voices are louder. Right, their voices are the ones that are being heard and are being rewarded for the things that they want. And this this is a very good example of that marginalization of those existing families to where now their voices are not really being heard, if they were at all.
Yeah. it could be a cautionary tale, right? And I think you play with some ideas in your article, and I'd like to talk more about this. Like, how could decisions have been made that might have changed this trajectory, this dynamic? So one of the questions you ask is, or you probe is, what if this school had become a Spanish immersion program and not a Mandarin immersion program? Let's talk through that.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. So with one thing that the school did that I argue in the larger project is that it's really using Mandarin as sort of a global language, where Spanish is sort of a practical type language. Mandarin Chinese is something that you would want to use when you're gonna be an entrepreneur or a more professional type occupation. One where you're gonna maybe work across the globe, right? Where you're interacting with different cultures. Whereas Spanish and it's sometimes marketed as something that's much more practical that you can use day to day with any type of a individual. I feel that part of the reason they chose Mandarin is to highlight this and to attract parents who have more of a global mindset, which are generally parents who are more higher income level. Also with Spanish, though, in actuality, I feel that if Spanish if Spanish was implemented, maybe not in this school in particular, but I think we still could see some of the same things if middle class or upper middle class parents were looking for another language. I don't necessarily feel that many of them really wanted Chinese per se, or maybe not in my situation, but in general. But if they can find a language that their present school or their present community is not offering, they still might go to a Spanish immersion school at another district, and then the same thing could happen there. If that Spanish immersion school was in a low income district, we might see middle class parents coming from another district to also engage in the Spanish. So I think that language is the most important aspect here. But then when we try to parse out the sort of benefits or the differences between Mandarin Chinese and Spanish, I feel that Mandarin Chinese has that global aspect that is very attractive to a lot of middle and upper middle income parents.
Mm-hmm. And there's this interesting part of your article where you talk, you're very honest about you as a researcher and you entering these scenes, and Mandarin, right?
Yes,
and when they see that, what's the reaction?
So I think it helped me with a lot of access. My Chinese speaking background helped with access. It helped me to be able to tell parents and admin, administrators, and teachers. For one thing, I've learned another language, right? So I know the effect and the challenges that come along with trying to learn another language. But also, I think that there was a sort of a way for me to kind of assist them in what maybe pitfalls or challenges the school as a whole might come across when it comes to trying to teach another language and learn one and also implement one.
So let's imagine you're on a school board, right? And, again, in the vein of like what could be done differently, what are the decisions a school could make to try to mitigate some of these dangers of gentrification?
So for the school I was at, when we think about the gentrification, I had said that the school is in this working class neighborhood, and we have we have gentrification without the change in the school in the neighborhood. A lot of research about gentrification is showing when the neighborhood changes, logically, or it wouldn't be a surprise that, okay, if the neighborhood changes, the school within that neighborhood, the demographics of that may also change. My study is unique because, and I probably jumping ahead a little bit, but my study here is unique because the neighborhood doesn't change, right? It's a working class neighborhood, yet the school is different. So if I was on a school board, I would think, well, first let's look at the demographics of our community and who do we want to serve, and really ask the question, what is dual language for? Initially, I feel that dual language was a lot more for immigrant communities, which we have a lot of here in California, of course, in Orange County, to help them in education with language, with learning English. So we have to think of what is the language for? Who are we trying to serve? So I think that would be the first thing I would think about on a school board. Additionally, I would like to think about the strand aspect. So within the school, when we implement the language, how are we going to balance it to make sure that all students are benefiting from this, from the implementation of this language?
Yeah. What advice might you give to parents who want to send their kid to a dual immersion school but want to do so in an ethically way? Asking for a friend.
I think maybe I know your friend. I, it's a tough one because most parents just they're thinking about their children, which is understandable. So it's like, well, you want to have the language that you want to have, and you want to go for that. But I think maybe if a lot of to be in make sure you are aware of what's happening in the school and to try and find a way to make sure that again that all students in the school are being involved. I said earlier, some of the schools are full immersion. And a lot of times when those schools are full immersion, it makes it a little bit easier because you don't have the back and forth over, well, which side of the school is sort of going to benefit, or which side of the school gets what. So if you don't have a full immersion, then you have to be very cognizant of the non-immersion parents and those non-immersion students. So I think really as a parent, it goes to having that support of all the students in the school and from both sides and having, I would say, there are a lot of parent organizations at schools that can make sure that both voices are represented. And the school I was at, I'm not sure, I feel that maybe some of the parents who were not in the immersion program, maybe they didn't care as much about being a part of the school, but you still want to make sure those voices are represented. So try and find a way to have someone be a representative for that group as well.
Yeah, thank you. All right, you mentioned a larger project. Tell us about what else you're working on. What can we expect in the future?
So really this project is about school choice, about parents choosing the type of schools that they want to send their kids to. So I'm continuing that vein with school choice. I'm looking at charter schools now where that's a big school choice, right? Charter schools only exist because parents choose to go there. And that, of course, is a larger issue with what's currently happening in our society with school choice movement, with the Department of Education, with who has the sort of ultimate say in what's best for our children, educationally speaking. So there's that. And I'm also working on another vein of educational related research, but it has to do with artificial intelligence, which of course is a big topic right now. So,
ooh, what are you doing with that?
So I'm looking at actually that here is university level students and how two things. One is how can artificial intelligence help instructors, become better teachers, and not only that, does it influence the way we teach? Does artificial intelligence maybe I will give a student a different grade because of AI? So is it influencing the way we teach? And then how does it help students, of course? And then is there a bias between how it helps students with respect to race and ethnicity and gender?
And that's an interdisciplinary team across.
Yes,
yeah.
That's my interdisciplinary team across the university here at CSUF, working with some of the great people over in the math department. So I'm excited about that project too.
What did we not cover? What else? Anything else you want us to pick up?
Yeah, I mentioned I wanted to make sure to talk about the school changed without the neighborhood changing.
Yeah.
There was one thing you just asked me about the two sides. I think I guess I wanted to mention how the sides, like I feel for my project, the controversial thing potentially could be the negative cases. I don't feel for this paper that it's the paper, the scope, it's outside the scope of the paper, but really I wanted to give more of a voice to those parents who were not in the manual immersion program, did not send their, and there is a little bit of that, but more about, well, what is happening with those parents who didn't choose Chinese but decided to stay at the school? Why are they doing that? How do they feel?
Oh yeah, that's fascinating.
A little more about that.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Any final read, watch, podcast recommendation for folks?
So, for those of you who've heard of Nice White Parents, it's an older podcast from the New York Times. It's very much similar to what I just described. So, if you want to listen to that, that's similar to my research. And then, really, Nicole Hannah-Jones is a New York Times columnist. She writes long form work, 10,000 words or more. And she writes a lot about school and school choice. And she put out an article about the Department of Education and civil rights, but also she writes an article because she is, of course, in a higher socioeconomic bracket, but she intentionally chooses a low income, disadvantaged school for her child. And she writes about that type of choice for her child. So those are a couple of things if you're interested in this education topic to go out and look for.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, guys.